Jaguar. Why don't you do your own research? They ask you in your head, and I say, why, it's done for me by reputable sources, and I only ever choose the most reputable, not the British Museum. And so this Lord Bird Jaguar has cut a serpent and stuck a burning ember in its throat so that an ancestor emerges, angry about being woken from the dead. But the priest reasons with the ancestor that we here still living need to chat. Sorry, that was a bit of a glib description and doesn't communicate the sheer horror of what must have been going on while the triptych maker carved this. Can you imagine being having to carve such a scene, or at least sketch it later for carving while it was happening right there in front of you? Not that such a thing would have happened, but a serpent all cut up and an angry ancestor coming out of the serpent's mouth? Now this is actually a human skull, and this documentarian is in no way fibbing about that. Go to the British Museum yourself and read the tag yourself, but because the tag is so overwritten in this instance, this documentarian is afraid to show it on camera because of copyright issues. But anyway, in utter gravity and utter seriousness, this is actually a decorated human skull from the Mayan period. Now, imagine if the owner of this skull had only died last week. Who is more spooky, the Mayan priest who took the human head and ate some magic mushrooms and cleaned the head of all flesh and blood, and then set about painting and pasting beads all over the human skull? Is that spooky or understandable to the time? Whereas here we have a modern museum that decides, hey, why not put on display an actual human skull for tourists to take pictures of? Most dead stay buried, but not the dead that in any way interest the British Museum and its contributors. One would imagine the British Museum, as a member of the Illuminati/Freemasons, believes in immortality and leaving the dead to rest and treating them respectably, but not in this case, and not in the case of the head in the jar, for there is somewhere in the British Museum a head in a jar, which this documentarian did not come upon in his rushed visit, but it is there somewhere. Cooper Wilson had a picture of it, not to mention various mummies, body shells transported in from the ruins of Pompeii, etc. It's okay for the British Museum to display these corpses because they're ancient, but someone who died last week? Imagine the outcry, even if it was the dead body of a famous person. You just want to scream when you find yourself in the depths of the British Museum. You want to scream at the sheer horror. Here now we see that the idea of the dragon has come all the way to ancient Mayan culture, making one wonder about how long all the dinosaurs actually lasted, if one remembers that the Orientals, who would have had no contact with the Mayans, also thought the same about the existence of dragons. Or maybe even it may have been the case that fossils were lying about in the open more often, and sometimes they were seen as objects of ridicule. Dragons, in this case a dragon with an awkward fang, but of course there was no intensity to the mockery. Even the Mayans, who were hardly afraid to go one-on-one with anything, even the Mayans watched out as far as dragons went and took caution, took care. One thing to be said for the Mayans, they were colorful and they had very nice looking books that are so nice even the British Museum seems to refrain from wrecking them up too much. Let us now take a moment and look through at the little pictures and imagine the stories belonging there too. Here then are tiny everymen, fashioned to their true height in any ancient modern or ancient period civilization, just how they stand in comparison to the head of the Mayan priest next door, which is only the head bit of the Mayan priest, for Pete's sake, is amazing. This then is how they feel each and every day, a true representation, a truth. This is how they feel about us, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the British Museum, the white boy elite. This is how they feel. They feel ready and willing to put us at a small place, to make us small things in their eyes that only stand 1 inch high, and they look down from their helicopters, from their skyscrapers, from their golden planes, and their drifting hot air balloons. And this is actually, yes, I would believe how normal man, even fearful of flying, must look. A normal woman would look no different comparatively. Two-headed serpent. On a field of black lies the two-headed serpent. Here's an interesting question. Was Alfred Hitchcock a friendly person or not? He must have been at least some of the time, but maybe it is only frustration. And anyway, all dead, all dead. And here then we have an ivory bow used in the film Rebecca, which the late great Hitchcock adapted from an old-fashioned novel by a French authoress, Daphne du Maurier, into a thrilling, albeit black and white film. One has to laugh, imagining how the Inuits happened to design this piece perfectly to fit into a black and white movie. It fits in right before the scene with Olivier talking about the dull and uninteresting, quote-unquote, dull and interesting stretch of sand, and then the dog scampering and the spooky old man, that whole thing from the Doors song, people are strange, etc. But fun nowadays how you can see into the houses of complete strangers a lot more than you usually could. All over the World Wide Web you can see into the houses of strangers, and a strange sight it is indeed to see this ivory bow before you and then go home and rent a DVD of Rebecca and get up to that scene and be shocked to see the same ivory bow back in time. However many years it's been from the time you watched the video backward to the year Rebecca was released. The scenes on the bow depict a whale hunt, of course. There's the whales moving about, and there are the miniature men, far smaller than the whales, waving their spears rampant in the sky. They are happy. They are cold, naturally, and hungry, but soon they'll eat, because whaling season is wide open, and the whales are much larger than ever before as they evolve into giants in the once clean oceans of the Atlantic.